You are listening to the WB Download, coming to you from Wieland Builders Showroom in Studio 1C. We are a podcast centered around building custom homes, the customer experience of building a custom home, and a really entertaining listen from many great guests and interviews that may or may not have anything to do with building. I'm excited to share with you their voice and their stories that will enhance your idea of the custom builder world. All right, welcome once again, everybody, to the WB Download. Today is Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. I'm Jeff Wieland, president of Wieland Builders, and I'm glad to have you back here. I'm bringing you the show today with my dog, Wilson. The big dog needed to get out of the house, so I brought him with me, and now we're sitting here watching it just pour down rain once again. Man, we got to swim our way out of this spring. But, hey, we've had a busy few weeks here at Wieland Builders. My brother and two of his girls had their birthdays, and one of my sister's daughters had their birthdays this last couple weeks. Busy week here in May, or busy month here in May. We've got a couple other big ones coming up, and always fun to celebrate. Keeps us busy here. So happy birthday to those clowns. Mother's Day was this past Sunday, so I hope nobody forgot about that. I want to say happy Mother's Day once again to all the mothers out there and all the dads who have to be mothers out there. It's a special day, and we certainly don't celebrate you enough. So happy Mother's Day. Hey, what we got going on here at Wieland Builders, we got some pretty cool stuff. We signed another contract with some people up in Liberty Township, and it's one we've been working on for a little while, and we finally got there. It's in a neighborhood called Carriage Hill. A little fun fact about Carriage Hill is Wieland Builders has been building a house, at least one house per year in there since the inception of Carriage Hill, which was in 2012. It's a beautiful place to live, just an unbelievable piece of property. My mom and dad live in there. Shannon and I and the kids lived in there for a minute, and we have a lot of friends who live in there. And it's just a great place to live, and we've been very fortunate to be able to build for these folks in that neighborhood. It's one of the last lots in there. It's right down the street from the very last house we just finished in there. It's pretty cool. Hey, another thing, I think I mentioned this last time, but we bought a house in Indian Hill down here, and the house had a small kitchen fire in it, and the folks didn't want to move back in there. They got comfortable somewhere else while they were mitigating the house. We were able to go in there and assess it and make the deal, and we've already begun working in there. We've got all the framing done, and we met with the county up there looking at specific inspections and things that they were going to want us to do, and we're rocking and rolling on it, man. It's just a beautiful home and a beautiful piece of property. A friend of mine built it in 2018, so I was able to talk to them a little bit about it, and we're gonna get it put back together and get it back on the market. It's an exciting project. This is not something that we normally do, and I am not a gambling man, but if I were, this is what I would consider all in, because this is a big deal. And I can't wait to give you updates on that one as well. And hopefully we'll be able to update you on our social media and on our website about what we got going on out there. Pretty cool deal. And like I said, it's a beautiful home site. It's on 3.5 acres out there, and just looks really good. Homerama's coming along. I always give you an update on Homerama. We've been kind of slow out there a little bit. This is a different kind of show this year because we're not completely rushed to get it done. The show's at the end of August, and we've had some hangups there. We're in a normal year for Homerama. If I would have had those hangups, I'd have fired every single person on that job site. But this year it's a little bit different. And right now we're kind of in that painting stage, countertop stage, which it's always a little bit slower. Things have slowed down a little bit. It's been raining so much here that we haven't had a chance on exterior flat work and finishing up the painting on the outside. So it's going good. And the house is just beautiful. Like I said, I tell you every time, I fall in love with it every single time I go out there. And it's really fun to work with our customers that we're building that house for. We're grateful for all the stuff that we have going on here. I can't wait for y'all to see the progress on each one of these jobs. And it's amazing what's coming together for us this year. I have to say a lot of it's credited to this team that we have here at Wieland Builders. They're on top of their game, and we've had some new people here in the past few months, and put them together with the people that we've had here working. This team's one of the best I've ever had. It's each of them have our customers, and they have Wieland Builders' best interest in mind all the time, and they have the capacity and they have the capability that I'm just in awe of, and I'm super proud of them. So these guys are just kicking ass, and I love every second of it. And it's fun to have this type of team put in place. It's something I've always dreamed of. So that's what's happening here at Wieland Builders. I want to lead into our next guest here. We have none other than Michael Hines from Oyler Hines Real Estate Group, and they're a Coldwell Banker group here in Southwest Ohio. He is the epitome of a hardworking realtor. My dad always told me that my grandpa said all the time that you can kill it in a real estate business if you just work hard. And this is Michael and his family who do this deal down here. They focus on high-end custom homes. They focus on land, and they focus on putting customers together with those two other items. His family history goes deep into the building development business here in Southwest Ohio, and I'm gonna let this thing speak for itself, because I texted him a couple times afterwards, and he texted me, and I just said, man, it was so awesome just to sit down and catch up with you. And once again, I've known this dude for a long time, and we sit down and do the podcast, and I learn more about him. So it's a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast as much as I did interviewing. Let's bring him in here, Michael Hines. All right, welcome to the show, Mr. Michael Hines. Thanks for being here.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Man,
I've been talking about how impressed I am with this whole setup. It's
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Just with the podcast room or the entire thing? I mean,
just you,
okay,
mainly.
right.
The rest of it doesn't matter. The equipment, let's be honest. No, this is great.
So what do you do? Why are you here? I mean, what do you do for a living, man?
Well, you know what? That's depending on who I'm talking to and the day of the week, it depends, right? Yeah. But on any given day, I like to call myself a glorified real estate agent. I'm a real estate agent that has basically a focus in new construction. So we run a team called Oyler Hines. We're with Coldwell Banker.
Yeah.
But our team has two divisions to it, essentially. There's the new construction division, which I run, and then there's also a resale division, which my partner Scott Oyler runs. But I'm fortunate enough to have grown up in the real estate industry. So being in new construction, it's in my blood. My dad did it. My mom's been around it forever. And I just focus on helping builders or clients build homes. And
okay.
That's it. So just help with, I like to call myself the bookends of deals. I normally start with the beginning, finding land, and then towards the end as we're trying to pull it all together.
How long have you been doing this?
So I've been doing what I'm doing for about 20 years now.
Yeah.
I say this, different iterations.
Start when you were like 6 or 7?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
I just turned 40 actually. Let's see, turned 40 2 weeks ago.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels weird. My bones ache and I'm sore.
Easy.
Yeah. I was joking with our sales manager actually the other day as I turned 40 and I have a 3-year-old. I have a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And it's funny because his kids, he's a few years older than me, and his kids are 16, 17, 18. So
I run into that too.
That up, Yeah,
I'm 50 and my kids are 12 and 10. So yeah, we run into the same thing.
Right?
Yeah.
I like that stuff. So, but yeah, so I started doing this actually. I started shoveling curbs for my dad back when I was 13, 14, 15. So I've been around the development industry or new construction industry since then. And then after college is when I started working for his development company, which was in 2005, 6.
All right.
Around that. So I love it. And I got that opportunity to know you for quite a while too. So
well, I feel so old sitting here talking to you because I was because a lot of people, I was friends with your dad before I was friends with you,
Sure.
and I've known your dad and I've done some stuff with him, and I'm like, yeah, I'm an old guy, but so your dad was a developer and works with you now and does land deals, right?
He does. Yeah. I'm lucky enough to call him my dad, my partner, so many things, because we started our company before we merged with Scott Oyler's team. We started it after the downturn in the market. So my dad's been in land development for 40 years.
Yeah.
He used to work for, and with Mike Zicka back in the day.
Yeah.
A lot of great folks. And then he started his company, did a bunch of big developments like TPC at Rivers Bend. A few that unfortunately during the downturn took a turn for the worse, but had a lot of success. And honestly, I don't think I could be luckier having grown up in this business. I mean, you know how it is being a family-owned company, working with your brother, working with your family, having that opportunity to kind of get a nice foundation and a basis for what I do. And I'd consider my best friend. I get to sit literally every day. Our office is maybe 20 square feet, and he sits right next to me 3 feet away. Yeah, he's probably annoyed with me half the time because I'm always peppering with questions and just doing all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so it's been awesome.
So your brother works. You had one or two brothers that work with you?
So I have one brother that works for me. I have two brothers, and then a sister. My brother Bob, he works with us. He's one of our new construction sales folks. He does a lot. I say that's probably an underwhelming way of putting what he does, because he does a lot for us. Works with a variety of different builders, helps us on the sales and marketing side of that. And then I have another brother who used to work with my dad's company back when. He's off doing his own thing now. And then my sister as well. She's about 6 years older than I am, and she just moved back to Cincinnati about 10 years ago as a daughter. So we're lucky. We're all here locally. My mom's a real estate agent. She's been doing it for a long, long time. So I kind of hit the jackpot when it comes to the parents and family aspect.
Heck yeah, man. Family business. I mean, you've grown up into it, you know it. And people always act like, like I shouldn't say this on air, but they're like, oh man, you've got all this history behind you. And I'll bet you it's a huge thing. And I'm like, it's great for sure. I mean, it's great to have that resource. But one of the greatest things that I think I've gotten out of this business, and me starting in it so younger, is especially today, people say, how long have you been doing this? And I say, I literally was born into this business, just like you were.
Absolutely.
And it gives you a certain knowledge that people cannot grasp.
Yes.
Because you've seen and it doesn't matter if you've seen it all, because I still make mistakes. I still run into things. I'm like, oh my gosh, did that really just happen? And see all those kind of things. And you've been thinking the last 40 years that I would have figured this out by now, and every day is something new.
Yeah, you think you know better, right? Growing up in a family business too, it's like a blessing and a curse, right? Because you have the opportunity to learn so much, but then you have to get out of the shadows a little bit as well. Yeah. I remember talking to my dad when we first started our company together. This is back in 2010 or so. I wasn't that young. I was probably 27, 28 years old. And I remember talking to him about just being nervous in meetings and what to say. And somehow I got over that. But also you just want to make your own path and make your own way. But at the same time, we never have the opportunity to succeed as quickly as you did. Yeah. So I'm well aware of that opportunity. But it's you're absolutely right. It's like osmosis. You just somehow are able to absorb stuff that you didn't even realize you knew.
Yeah.
But you got to watch out, because you make sure your ego and your head doesn't get too big to where you're like, I
happens a lot in this business.
Right? Yeah, it does. It does. This business especially, right? I get asked all the time, like, hey, you work with so many builders. When are you going to start a building company? I'm like, that is the hardest business that exists out there. Right. So guys like yourselves that know it, I don't think people realize how much pressure, how much goes into that. And so when you see somebody do it well, like yourselves, you realize it. That's why I'm fortunate to work with so many great people like you guys.
Yeah. I was, we were down to ball game last, I don't know, we were sitting there for hours because for the 19th time this year, it was rained out and we were waiting, but we finally got our seats, and this kid I was sitting next, call him a kid because he's younger than me. There's a guy that I'm sitting next to, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about going on my own too. And he goes, what kind of advice you got? And I'm like, well, that's easy. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Because you love what you do. Yeah. And as soon as you go out on your own, well, you're not doing that anymore. You're running a business, and you're not doing what you've set out to do anymore. And so if I love, swinging a hammer or pouring concrete, I'm not going to do that anymore. I got to run a business. So if you love what you do, go work for somebody else. We had David Dries on here a couple weeks ago, and I asked him the same thing. I said, what's your advice? His advice is, no matter what you do, you got to know your numbers. Yep. You got to know your numbers, which is 100% the truth.
Especially in
but my advice is, don't do it. Go work for the Dries company.
Yes, exactly. Work for somebody else. Take that pressure off you. Right. That's 100% true. I think sometimes it's our egos that drive us into wanting to do it and thinking better than everybody else. But like you said, 40 years in, 50 years in, you're still making big mistakes every once in a while. I make them every single day, and you're like, I should have known better. But at the same time, there's things that are thrown at you that you could never, ever, ever guard against. They just happen, right? And it's just, you have no idea what's going to happen, and it's exhausting. At the same time, there's some fulfillment that comes to it that you're like, I feel pretty good about that. So, the tough days are tough. The good days are really good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. So I say this on here all the time. My dad always said that's why the builders love the bars, because they drink when they're happy and they drink when they're sad. I mean, when it's bad, it's bad, and when it's good, it's good.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah.
So where'd you grow up at?
So grew up in the Sims Township area here in Cincinnati. So I'm like the exact quintessential Cincinnati story, right? So I grew up where I grew up, and where I live are probably 3 miles apart. Nice. So I live in Montgomery now. I grew up in Montgomery, went to All Saints, and then went to Moeller, went to Miami University for college. And then right after that is when I came out and started working for my dad. But grew up, and I loved, honestly, I'm still I still walk the same streets. I still get to enjoy myself. In fact, our office we bought an office building in downtown Montgomery where where the space is, there's a big Montgomery parking lot. That's where the Moeller kids used to park I remember parking there and walking up to school. Yeah. So it's come full circle, and I love it because I know it so well.
That's good.
Yeah. So I don't know what I'd do if I ever moved away. I tried that for a while, but I just realized Cincinnati's home.
What made you want to go to Miami? Because it was close to home, or did you have something specific that you want to do there?
Yeah, well, so my dad went there, so it was kind of like it was familiar to me in a lot of ways.
Alumni is strong up there.
That's big time strong.
Yeah,
and it's just a great school. It's far enough away that you can feel independent on your own. But if I need a haircut, I can come on back and I can go to the same person that's always cut my hair. So that familiarity was really nice, and they had a great urban and regional planning degree up there. That's what I wanted to do. I was toying between that and business. Ended up going up there, and it was great. So. It's funny. I went to undergrad and I did okay. I wasn't going to set any records, from grades. But then I had about 5 years in between that, and then when I went to grad school, and it's amazing how much more once you get a little bit older, you apply yourself.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I kind of wish I could rewind.
Completely different. Priorities aren't aligned.
They are exactly. Especially after you go through the downturn when you get out of college. Oh, crap, this is not good.
Right.
I got to really get my stuff together, and then going back through them. You just have a little bit of real world knowledge in that. Yeah. Kind of wish college started a little bit after a few more years of experience. Right. So you could really grasp that.
Well, that was a tough time for you to come out and around there. I mean, that was just before the downturn, and things had changed drastically for all of us, we were in Fort Collins, Colorado for our Builder 20 group one time, and that's where the University of Colorado is. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about how there's hardly any kids signed up for the construction program out there because of, and that back then, that was right. It was kind of just after 16, somewhere 17. I say just after, but sure. We were feeling the effects of people looking at the construction business, watching what we went through in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever it was. Sure. And people are looking at it going, I don't want to do that. Yeah. I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to go to school for it. I'm not going to do anything. So in 16, 17, 18, we were starting to see the fact that there weren't anybody graduating with construction degrees. There wasn't anybody wanting to get into the business because they saw how bad of a beating it took. So kudos to you for sticking to it, man.
No, I mean, it was honestly probably a lack of realization of what I was even getting into, right? Yeah. You just kind of just put your head down and you just go and drive and that kind of stuff. Yeah, but you're totally right. It's like, it's tough. And I think that's why we are where we are in the industry, is like there's so few people that started coming out during the last, decade. And now we're grasping to try to find, great skilled workers out there, supervisors, all kinds of so again, why reputable companies like yourselves are succeeding, because you do at least attract the few people that are out there that are good at what they do.
I hope so. I hope so. So you're married, right?
I am married. Yes.
Yeah.
Married. Logan, my wife, she runs a business as well.
Okay.
She works harder than I do.
What's her business?
So it's called Mitchell Salon and Day Spa.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Which one?
Logan. So all of them. Yeah, her mom started that. Yeah. So
man,
she's like,
why are you still working?
That's the truth. Yeah, we have too many bad habits of things we have to go on trips and all this kind of stuff. Plus, I mentioned those 3 little kids. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, they take it. They take the money, don't they?
They do. They know how to do it, and we spoil the heck out of those kids, and probably spoil ourselves a little bit. But, her mom started it back. They just had their 40-year anniversary last year. The year. Yeah. So Deborah.
Wow.
And she was an impressive woman. It's really interesting because I got to grow up, around my dad's, company, and then my mom, of course, was working hard and that sort of thing in the real estate industry. Logan got to see the same with her mom. And everything growing Mitchell's. I mean, she was grinding, working hard.
Are they local? They're just here in Southwest Ohio.
Yeah. That's a big misconception because a lot of people hear Mitchell's, they think Paul Mitchell. So that's a big national brand, but it's Mitchell's. Deborah Mitchell Schmidt was her name. Logan Mitchell Hines is my, or Logan Mitchell Schmidt initially, obviously. So so now she runs all of that. Her mom unfortunately passed away about 3 years ago. So she took over the companies. They were already paving the way for that. She's a great counterpart over there, Mike, who they've run it together, and it's just it's phenomenal.
So like when you ask for like a back rub or something like that, I mean, that's a real deal, right? I mean, you're not getting short-handed.
No, luckily I do get free massages and haircuts. But you know what? It's funny. The hardest part is you feel when they're there and they're easily accessible, you want to do less of them because you feel like you're taking advantage.
Right.
But unfortunately, Logan does not know how to cut hair. She could give a massage. I'll say that, but that's not her skill set right there. Yeah,
I'm probably making you nervous. I mean, if she needs a back rub, you're like, oh man, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing.
And stuff.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to screw it up though. And then she's like, here, watch, I'll show you how to do it. And then you just get back rub, fall asleep. Good.
Well, I know who to call if she does need one, or better yet, she knows who to call on that front. Yeah, she's a businesswoman, 100%. She's not And if she was here, she'd say same thing. She's not the creative when it comes to cutting hair, doing massages, all that kind of stuff. She's a marketer and an operations person.
And that's what you need that.
Yeah, and she's very, very good at it. Honestly, I think it's what I'm most fortunate about is when I go home and I'm having a tough problem, she is great at giving advice, great at giving thoughts, and just a great listener as far as
good.
So it's really nice.
That's good.
And I enjoy it. So we get to talk, and so it's funny because everybody's always like, "How do you guys do what you do and still manage it?" It's like, well, we don't. We just figure out every day's different.
You manage it.
It's tough. Yeah.
That's it. They say, how do you manage? Well, I manage it.
Yeah. You just do what you do. You know? Yeah. And it's, you get through it, you make decisions, you talk as much as you can. And it's, but we have 3 little kids together and they are the absolute best. So we're in the thick of it right now, but man, we're fortunate.
That's cool.
We're lucky folks.
So what's, I jump around so much, but I mean, it's just a conversation, but, and we're not even drinking, but, so what's the first development that you remember that your dad did?
So when I was a kid, the very first one was, Pine Run. Yeah. So that was the first one I remember well enough to where I was old enough to where I could actually be out on the job sites and get it.
What year was that? Was 97, wasn't it?
Was in the,
Home 97.
Yep, exactly.
My mom and dad lived in there.
Did they really?
That was where I built my first house on my own in there.
No joke. Yeah. Do you remember which street it was?
Yeah, it was, you asked me that. It's the first one on the left when you come in on the main drive there.
Oh, yeah, the main drive.
Yeah.
I asked because I used to have to, I was literally the kid that was out there shoveling the curbs.
Yeah.
Very first time they gave me the keys to a bulldozer, a Bobcat.
Yeah.
I lifted up the rocks and I dumped them all on my head accidentally.
Oh.
So luckily it had the cage up above, so only a little bit hit me. But man, it freaked me out. I never made that mistake.
That's all right. My dad still does that.
I'm not the only one. They shouldn't have put me behind the wheel of anything. What are the big bulldozers when they use? It's like the dump truck bulldozers when they're out there actually clearing dirt for a development. I can't remember what they're called.
Like a pan.
Yes, yeah. I remember they let me drive one of those one time when I was 16 years old.
That's cool.
John, what was John's last name? I'm blanking it. I remember him taking me under his wheel because he worked with my dad. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to let you hop on in here and try this thing."
Nice.
This thing was like a 10-ton.
Oh yeah, it's humongous.
Tires that were double the size of me now. It was awesome.
That's cool.
I loved it.
I forgot that they did Pine Run.
Pine Run. So we did that one, and then moving over to Oasis a little bit, and then it kind of snowballed from there. Yeah. They had some awesome ones.
I was supposed to be the assistant chairman of Homerama in 2000, which was TPC Rivers Bend.
Yes,
and which is where I met your dad and met everybody at. And in 1999, the guy who was the chairman kind of went to the wayside somewhere, and I was 20. I mean, I was 22, 23 something years old, and I was the chairman of Homerama. So I put that show together with I can't remember the guy's name. That was he called himself a partner.
Rob Stansel?
Rob Stansel. That's what it was. Rob Stansel and your dad and Dan Griffith. It was all these different people. But that was probably one of the last big shows that we had, really, besides Lake up in Lebanon, when we were up there. But that was, what was that, 19 houses, 18 houses, and people were buying 2-day passes.
Yeah. And I remember it was the first one they did back in the back section near the bike trail as you came down there. That was the first time they'd ever used like 3D. It wasn't really 3D, but it was those cameras that could walk you through the house. Yeah. And I remember it was like something like $6,000 or $7,000 for each house to do. And it was a big deal. And now you can do it for a few $100s.
You're right.
On that kind of front. I remember them walking through. It was amazing. But it was a great show. And because you guys are having your 25-year anniversary,
25th
right?
Homerama, yeah.
25th Homerama.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy to think of how time flies like that.
Time flies.
I remember cracking my head open at that Homerama because I was putting up the hurricane fence. And used a pile slammer, and I nailed it down right in the head, and then went to the hospital for a little while.
Man,
went to the show. Yeah.
That was tough. That was a good show. That's still a great neighborhood. It's still a great neighborhood.
It was interesting. So from the time it started, it went gangbusters, right? And then we had Vista Point across the street. I say I take credit for my dad's work,
you should.
Of course. Yeah,
you should. He's not here.
Naturally, exactly. That's how I built my career, I guess. But they had Vista Point, which was like the next section across 48. And right when they started putting that in, Homerama was there 2 years, and the next thing you know, we had the downturn hit, and we went from selling 3, 4, 5 lots a year. I'm sorry, 100 lots a year to 3 or 4 or 5 a year. And it was just dramatic. And I don't think I could have learned more than I did in the downturn. The downturn was one of those things that it slammed and it just hit you really hard. I don't think I say this enough to my dad, and hopefully you guys say this enough to yourselves sometimes, is like the way you handle that when you're in that true adversity and your back's up against the wall and you're just, everything's crumbling and going wrong, and to handle it with such grace and just keeping your head up high. So fortunate as far as that goes.
Yeah. We're looking around in the room to people who can't see us on the podcast. I just had Leanne come in and open. That's who I was texting.
Oh, yeah.
Like, will you please come open this door? I'm sweating in here.
A little hot. I'm making you nervous. I get it. I understand how it goes. It's getting too real in here.
So that was, yeah, man. I mean, we continue to talk about the downturn like it was yesterday.
God, it seems,
so if I think you think about what it was like to be in it, I think about what it's like to be on the other side of it, and constantly have that as a reminder all the time.
Yeah.
And you're looking for key points, red flags. You're looking for anything. I mean, you're definitely going from what you learned, which is kind of rolls me into one of my next questions is like how you got started into the high end. I mean, one of the reasons why we're in, because I started building custom houses when I graduated college. And then we went to more production because that's what them guys were doing.
Sure.
And then when we get into that downturn, one of the things that came out of it is, man, we had a hammer. We had to go and travel and start building again, and so it was whatever we could. And I love building custom houses because you could do all kinds of cool stuff.
Sure. So
my question to you is how'd you get to why did you pick the high end stuff? Why'd you pick what you're doing?
Yeah. You know what, when the downturn hit, we had to reevaluate like everybody. And it wasn't like you could just necessarily choose what you wanted to do. You just did what was in front of you at the time to kind of make ends meet and just keep going. So in the very beginning, I went back to school because I was like, you know what, at the very least, if I have to get out of this industry, I want to make sure I'm insulated. So I went back, got my MBA, but did that. And during that time frame, I talked to my dad. I'm like, hey, maybe we're not going to develop 400 acres into a new community tomorrow, but what do we do? What should we focus on right now? So we started talking about how when we would deal with real estate agents, it was a little bit frustrating sometimes because there was no land focus or new construction focus.
No.
Right? Yeah. You never heard this before. It's new.
This is brand new.
But when we would talk to a good agent, they were worth their weight in gold because they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Right? But then there were so many, unfortunately, the barriers to entry are low. And I don't mean that as a derogatory way about anything. There's always different tiers in any profession, right? Builders, anybody, real estate agents, of course.
Absolutely.
So when it came to that, we said, hey, what if we started a land brokerage and we focused on the areas where we think will come back to the market quickest after the downturn? So we said, we literally had like a small little business plan that said, let's focus in Montgomery and just find single off teardowns. And that was it. So we weren't even focused on the high end. We were just saying, hey, let's find teardowns. So we started focusing on teardowns and little assemblages and that sort of thing. And we found one, then we found another one. And the next thing you know, finding land, we became a pretty good land broker. We said, okay, hey, gosh, we have this opportunity now. Builders want them. Clients want them. What's the next? How can we provide more value to the consumer or more value to the builder? So we just said, okay, we got to figure out how to market these better so they can command better price points. They can have great branding. Everything feels right. So we started just slowly working our way up. It'd be one lot to the next lot. Then we jumped into Indian Hill and then to High Park and certain areas. So we just became the infill guys. We just totally went. So it kind of, we flipped the dime a little bit, flipped the script a little bit because we would go from doing big acreage tracts, or my dad really did that. I worked for him doing that. And then we said, hey, you know what? Let's just go off with the single family. So we're just gonna hit singles left and right. We don't need to hit home runs. So you hit enough singles, your batting average goes up. We felt pretty damn good. And we're like, okay, we'll do that. So that became our thing. And because of that, I mean, the lots are 200, 300 now. $800,000, $900,000 for lots, right? So we started just doing that.
1.3.
It's out of control. If you can even get it for 1.3 nowadays, right? It's bonkers what's happened out there because there's so little land. So now we like to say we're the bookends because we not control, but we are part of the early phase of finding the opportunity. So the opportunity is everything. If you control the land, you control the deal. So we'd find these opportunities. So our clients, our builders, the end consumer could find those early enough before they hit the market. And then we'd help them through the process. So that's how we got into that. And then of course, once you start doing, one high-end home, if you do a good enough job, then other people start talking about it. They started bringing you into other ones. So that opened us up into the resale side and doing ultra luxury as far as Indian Hill, Montgomery, just higher end homes. Fast forward a decade, we merged with Scott Oyler, who ran the biggest team at Coldwell Banker, and he was actually the biggest team in the city before we merged with him as well. And we merged our firms together, which were both large. He was larger than we were, but now we just were able to offer more horsepower. So we have specialized marketing people. We just are able to offer more, so like our caliber could go up and up and up, which was really nice. And that's what we're all about, just providing as much value for what you're compensated. If you're not, that's I think the biggest issue with real estate agents, to be honest, is like, does the compensation match the output?
Right.
And I think that was what we always wanted to, that was like the philosophy of our company from the beginning, is whatever we charge needs to be indicative of what we do. If it's not, then we're doing something wrong. And unfortunately, it's not always the case in every deal, but in certain deals, you are way upside down because you do too much and you don't get paid a dime. And other ones, you end up doing well. So it all evens out over time. But that's the philosophy of our business in general, is like, how can we provide the most amount of value to you as a builder, to, Joe Schmo as a client looking to build a house, and then we put the pieces together to make sure we can offer that. That's kind of where we are.
So two questions. One is, Scott is a third generation, right? Or second?
Scott is a third. So Parchment Oyler was his grandfather. And then actually not sure what his grandfather's name was. But Steve is Scott's dad. Yeah. Steve was around for a long, long time. He still coaches us and some of our team members as well. He's awesome. He's the biggest personality in the room anytime you meet him. Yeah. And then Scott's not far off from that. He's a great guy and just shares that same value of like just making sure the consumer's happy and just always going above and beyond. So third generation there too.
Nice. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was a real estate. He was a number of different things, but he was one of the things. He was a real estate broker.
Yeah. And was he up? And where was he?
I think he was like Finneytown, kind of like over in that area. Yeah. And he was friends with Bill Parchman, and it was Parchman Oyler. And I got started into the cattle business by Bill Parchman, from being in the cattle business. And I bought my first 4-H project from him.
No joke.
And that's how I started in the cattle business. Yeah.
Do you know Scott then at all? Have you met Scott?
I don't know him.
Okay.
I don't know him. I know a handful of his agents, but I shouldn't say I know him, but we're not like, where I call each other up or something like that.
Well, next time we'll have to get us all together. Yeah. Scott's a great guy, and we're lucky to be partners with him. Because now, like, the problem with a growing business, right, is you become all things to everybody. You start to say yes too many times, and you realize the yeses are like, can you actually do what you're saying? And that's why we merged, because, to be honest, like, I'm not the agent that's doing a lot of resale business. So let's bring in Scott or one of our team members. And we have freaking the best team members out there, best agents, ones that do a lot of business. And we were able to bring those folks in to help. So I might still be the point of contact, but behind the scenes, they may be helping to make sure that the level of quality is just high end. Yeah. But it's been good. That's how we got here.
How often do you get approached by one of the big guys for you to come work with them?
So, I think not as often as you think.
Really?
Yeah, because I think they realize a lot of times now, like, I'm first off, I'm super opinionated on everything, so I would be a pain in the ass to work for anybody else.
Matt Walker always told me that. He goes, "You wouldn't last here 5 minutes."
That's it. They just know. So I'd probably turn them away from that part. But it's when I first got into this business, I wanted to work for somebody else. Now that I work for myself, I don't know if I could. Yeah. Unless the market crashes, then all bets are off as far as that goes. But no. So not as often as you think. It's crossed my mind a time or two. But we get a pretty good team and group now, so I kind of keep to myself as far as that goes, and just try to work. Honestly, I just want to work with great people and be able to provide some value. And if it's not at that time, then maybe down the road in 5, 10, 20 years, we can work together. That's right. Life's too short to work with people you don't like.
One of the reasons I asked you that is we were at an award ceremony one time, and it's like big builder here, and they got all these people selling this, and big builder here, and all these people selling this, and here comes you, and they introduce you, and you got some award, and you got another top award, and they do it by dollar volume, right? Sure. And this person's like, they sold 4 million, and they sold 10 million, and they're like, this one sold 15, and here comes you strolling along, and they read off your number, and it was something like 35 or 40 million, and I could just see every table in the room going, oh my god, and I was sitting with one of them, and I remember you could just see the wheels spinning. They're like, take his number down. They were going to try and call you and see if they could recruit you. I'm like, you can't afford that boy. He's working his butt off.
That's the thing. It's the thing. The grind is there, and to give credit to where credit's due is like we work with so many people, so I take credit for other people's numbers sometimes. Right. It's not fair. That's easy to do. Like my brother is a big part of our company, and so we with those is like, and my dad. I mean, my dad now, he's probably taken more of a back seat and letting me run things over the course of the past 10 or so years. But I hate it in a lot of ways because I don't want to be front and center. But like we try to roll it under so we seem more impressive. Let's be honest about it a little bit. But my dad and my brother, Brandy on our team, Laura, there's so many people that play into that. So it all kind of rolls up to it. And because we're one, we used to be called Build Collective before we were Oyler Hines. So it would all roll under one group on that kind of front. So if I pretend to be humble, I need to be humble because it's that right there.
It's like, a team. And I think people, unfortunately, people don't, unless you know you, but I mean, they don't realize it until they get to experience it with you. So they're like, oh man, look at Mike Hines. I mean, look, he's just killing it. And then you do a job with you or something, you realize, man, it's not just you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're killing it. This person's killing. You got a great team put in place, and I think that's really, really important. You know, I mean, I think it's something that when you talk about egos in this business, it's the ego that holds you back. And even David Dries said that a couple of weeks ago. He's like, you got to let go. You got to let go of the control of everything and let the team run it. You know.
Yeah, and it's hard, especially in the very beginning. It's hard because you're used to doing so much by yourself. I'm sure when you started, you're running it, you're trying to do certain things, and then the more control you give up, if something goes wrong, it's easy to be like, you know what, I'm gonna take this back.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. But then once you get really good people, you know, like Becky Mannix is on our team. She's been with us for a long time. She used to work with Bill Heckman. Builder Resources.
That's right.
Yeah. Becky's a rock star. And if we would never be as successful as we are without her. There's no chance at it. So like you have a couple of people like that just elevate you. And that's why you feel guilty sometimes taking, and you know, you just say with your company, you get your name on the door and that sort of thing. So they think it's all you. A lot of times they think it's all me. And I'm like, gosh, guys, like if everything people left, the walls would crumble. Now, could we build it back up? Maybe, yeah. But you know, it's always a team. Any good company is built on the people that's underneath there.
People always come to me and say, "Hey, I saw that house you built over there," and man, and then they go on and on about it. And I'm like, I need to tell you that I didn't build it.
Yeah.
Wieland Builders built it.
Yeah.
And there's a whole team of people that were out there building that thing and working and making everything go smooth. And I can't take all the credit for it, but I'd like to.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to say, thank you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Appreciate it.
I did a great job. Nobody else did anything. You know, every nail that's in the house, I did. Have you ever thought about like how many people on a single house work on one, you know, let's say it's just like $1 million home. How many people, you probably have a good idea of the number.
We used to put, we probably will again this year. We put a sign in somewhere in the house that has all these crazy calculations, you know, like fun facts on it. And I think that one time I'd have to look it up and see, but we looked at every truck driver, architect, assistants, and everybody that comes through there. And I want to say it was something like 656 people that work on that house to get it to where it's at that time, you know, and it's just, and you're like, well, man, I would have thought that number was bigger. That's a lot of people.
Oh,
that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of stimulus in the economy, if I have to say so myself.
That's a lot.
Yeah. We're talking to you politicians out there.
Right.
Make sure you do as well.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's so much, but at the same time, it does come, like, a well-oiled machine takes all of those people to there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be issues, but to be able to manage it well, you know,
and to believe in what you believe, or not what I believe, but like the company believes, is what I'm saying.
Shared goals.
Like everybody has to have shared goals and the same core values, and understanding what the end product should be and how this should go. I mean, that's the hardest part, is getting that train all heading in the same direction.
That's what I walked in on the wall right over here, just behind the podcast. You have the four principles, and like it's that if everybody doesn't buy into that, then that's a problem, right?
Yeah, it makes it tough.
It takes a good leader to make sure people are buying into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you're going to stumble every once in a while, but it's okay, you know?
Yeah, you can't be perfect all the time.
No, not at all.
So let's talk about some market trends and some things, some insights and stuff. How would you describe the luxury real estate market today?
So it is so hyper local right now. Thank you. Right now, it's very interesting because let's take an area. Indian Hill, for instance. Indian Hill is absolutely on fire. If I had 10 lots, you and I could build 10 homes right over there, and we'd have buyers for it right away. So the luxury market is absolutely on fire. And I think it's because a lot of people have cash. They have a lot of cash that are sitting back. It's just on the sidelines. Maybe it's in the stock market. Their portfolios.
Why do you think that is? Why? Because we do that. Everybody's always amazed that somebody's paying $3-4 million for a cash for a house. Yeah. And why do you think they're sitting on their money?
I think they don't know where to put it. They want to keep it in safe investments. And a lot of them believe real estate is about the safest investment you can possibly
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, especially more so now. And I will never pretend to be an expert as far as that goes in the financial world. But a lot of them tell us, hey, I want to put my money in land, my house I'm comfortable with. They may be worried about what's going to happen with the stock market or the economy or cryptocurrency and that kind of stuff. So they think from a volatility standpoint, they feel pretty good about land or the house that they're living in. Plus, I always say, like, there's two things I don't mind spending money on, and it's the place I lay my head and my cell phone. Because honestly, I use both of those so often. Well, and I'll use a third, the trips. I don't mind, because traveling is what keeps me sane on that kind of stuff. But like, those are two things I'm like, you know what, if I want to buy a new phone every year, I'm going to do it because I use the dang thing so much.
Yeah.
Same with my home. It's where I lay my head. I want my kids to be happy. I want to have enough space to be able to have rooms that I can do what I need to do. And I think people have realized that COVID probably exacerbated it a little bit
yeah.
with space and that sort of thing.
When you were
Which was
confined.
yeah, you can't go anywhere, and working from home with your kids are relatively young, right? Working from home, that's hard when you have kids right there breathing down your neck a little bit. And
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a little bit just because it was like I don't have the personal discipline, the self-discipline to do things like that. I have friends of mine that work from home and they're pharmaceutical sales reps or whatever they do. And I'm always like, man, I just envy you guys not because you get to work from home, but you have this discipline to be able to continue to do that job, do it well.
Yeah.
I'm at home and I'm watching TV and I took a nap and then maybe I did some stuff and then I'm outside tossing baseball and I'm like, working from home was great. And I'm like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah. You're like, I just was hanging out. I'm watching the roast of Tom Brady up there instead. I'm just hanging out. Yeah. I'm telling you, I also think too, the thing about working from home for me is like, I kind of want a little bit of separation every once in a while. Like I like being on job sites. I like being at the office because I'm around my people. I'm seeing them, that kind of stuff. But also like when I get home, if it becomes too much for me about work, then I can't turn it off. And our businesses are different than a lot of folks. Is like, it doesn't shut off ever.
Right.
Like you can get a call at 11 o'clock at night and our wives are going to kill us because we're taking that phone call, but something's wrong. And if you let it spiral, it'll just get worse.
Yeah.
So that's for me. I've tried working from home and I don't mind it. But COVID was tough. But it's just something different.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Back to our original. So you're talking about people with cash and you feel like the luxury market is doing well.
Very, very well. Yeah. I there's signs that say maybe it won't continue to do quite as well, but we haven't seen that just yet. When it comes to the lack of opportunities out there, people aren't selling. A lot of people have built nice luxury homes and they got 2% interest, 2.5% interest rate. So they're holding on to them. And then the folks that are trying to get in, they seem like they've built a lot of cash up. They have a lot of opportunity. Maybe they have well-paying jobs and they're just ready to go. And we see this influx in people to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Like Cincinnati is awesome.
Southwest Ohio or Cincinnati, you think?
Southwest Ohio. Okay. Yeah, just in general, just because of the cost of living so great. I think there's our values here in Ohio, I think are strong. People really believe in them. And I believe them. That's why I didn't leave. We have a lot going for us. And that's why, us and Columbus and some of these other areas are continually voted some of the top suburbs or top areas in the nation just because of that. So I think that helps us. And I think that's going to take us to a different level. Even though we're a mid-sized city, I think we're just acting like a big city,
Sure.
So we got a lot of good things going. I think that relays into the luxury market. I say it's hyper local. Going back to the beginning of the statement is just because we see certain product in certain areas do much better than others. I think some of the newer, let's take Goshen. Like who would have thought in Goshen they'd have Homerama where it'd be average of 1.5 million homes that are built over there, but it's sold like gangbusters.
Yeah,
it's done really well. So that's I think you're going to see more of that. It just may take more time to build up and for it to happen like that.
Isn't that crazy? In 2005, which I was president of the Home Builders Association, and they started. We went in the Ohio Valley Development Council, we meet with all the different municipalities all the time and talk about updating their codes and talk about things that are going to help them with their insurance plans and different things from the Home Builders Association because that's what we do. And I remember we started talking to like Goshen in 2005, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. And everybody's like, why are we going out here and talking? And like, well, it's got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And eventually it's going to end up out here. And here we are, 20 years later, and it's finally there. But you as a city planner, as a government official, you cannot stick your head in the sand and think, well, we're Goshen, it's never going to come out here, or we're just Warren County, it's never going to, we're just not going to fight it. We're just not going to do anything with it. We're just not going to do any development. You have to, your job is to be a planner and to let those things come. And I think it's cool for Goshen. I think you're right though. I'm still kind of like, holy cow, we're in Goshen.
It's a lot of money.
$2 million.
And it is it's a pretty area out there. There's some great property. That one's so close to Loveland. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think, there's going to be a lot of change and there needs to be change over the next 10, 20 years because affordability is so hard. I mean, we're lucky that we focus in the luxury market where people do have cash and they have the luxury of doing what they want to do. But then you get to looking at home opportunities and living opportunities, American dream at like lower price points. It'd be great to figure out a way to solve that problem.
Yeah.
It's been something that I've been paying a lot of attention to as of late. I don't have the silver bullet to figure that out. I don't know what to even do, but the more I read about different opportunities, these 3D printed homes, modular homes, there's probably going to be opportunities there down the road. There will always be people that want to build high-end custom homes. Where they'll go, I don't know. I mean, the Indian Hills only has so many houses that you can tear down or rebuild or split off. Goshen and Loveland and some of these other areas will just continue to thrive. But I am curious on how, we can figure out ways to solve that affordability crisis. Is it through zoning? Is it through I think it's just forward thinking. So I know I'm going off script a little bit as far as the luxury side, but I always wonder how that's going to be, because we talk to so many buyers on the other side of our business that are $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 buyers, and they've just been looking for years and they can't find what they want. And these interest rates just clobber them.
It's tough.
It is tough.
It's tough. I mean, it starts with government regulation and the building codes and the things that these manufacturers are imposing and lobbying the code makers to push into the code book to make it standard. That gets expensive.
Yes.
The farmers and the people who have the land, who this is their retirement plan. Yeah. And they deserve it.
Oh, 100%.
You know, I mean, you've worked your butt off there, and people will just chastise them for selling their land. But, you know, hey, go buy it if you don't like it, you know. Yeah. But the farmers sell their land. But then what happens is it's a hot commodity. Yes. And maybe they're asking $4 million for it. And some big dog comes in there and goes, we're going to give you 6 just to shut everybody else up. Boom, boom, boom. Just keeps driving the price up.
Yep.
And then it just goes from there. Yes. The commodity market goes up for all the steel and lumber, and it's crazy. It's really crazy what happens. And I think that I'm always unrealistic just because I've been bred like that. I'm unrealistic on what things are supposed to cost.
Agreed. Well, we saw it before.
I'm from the west side.
Yeah. You have to. Yeah, you West Siders are the worst with it in the greatest way. You got to keep us humble and down to earth, because otherwise we're just going to drive the price up. You're totally right. That's why it's good to have an East Sider and West Siders partners. That's right. You know, but you're right. I mean, it's. There's nobody that deserves it more than these farmers that have been farming their land and doing what everybody would probably say they'd want to do, but it's the hardest work out there, you know. And then so that's capitalizing there. But then how you solve the other problems? It's like what's the old saying? A rising tide raises all ships. It's like, unfortunately, cost is going to only probably continue to go up. Yeah. Once it goes up, rarely comes back down unless something catastrophic happens. So I don't know how we, as a building industry, can change it, but we're fortunate to have folks like yourself that are out there lobbying and pushing for the rights of builders and stimulating the economy. Just all of this stuff that has to happen. I don't think folks realize how important it is.
When you start talking about affordable housing, people think about broke down South Side Chicago, you know, stuff like that, and that is not affordable. Affordable housing is making things affordable, making components affordable, making everything that goes into the house affordable, and it's really important because there's everybody needs a place to live, and I think that gets pushed on so much, you know, and it's crazy.
It's the sum of all the parts, right? There's thousands of little details that go into that, and we have to work on all of them simultaneously. That's why it's a tough job.
What do you see that's trending in the high end real estate market? I mean, you know, and I think when people always call me and say, what's the new trends? And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I do this every day. I don't know. I mean, we do this or we do this. I don't think that's trendy.
No, exactly.
You know, put a tub in the bathroom or something.
Yeah. You call it, is it a master bedroom? It's primary bedroom. Yeah, it's like that. It's what's interesting is I feel like the trends have not changed dramatically over the past few years, like 2 or 3 or 4 years, other than maybe colors, although it's still a lot of white kitchens and certain things. And then there's the details that go into a house. But when it comes to, I think the biggest trend is people doing exactly what they want to do and spending the money on what they want to do. Like it's different. What's important to everybody is different, you know, like each person's unique. But I think one area that I've realized is people trying to get close to just the stuff they like, you know, just being as close to like either whether it's one community because they want to be around other folks that have, you know, maybe 1 acre home sites, they want to be around that, or maybe you want to be in downtown Montgomery because you want to be walkable. I think just the way people live is now kind of tightened up with what the home is. So that's kind of joined forces where it used to be back when is TPC at Rivers Bend was developed and it was the newest neighborhood and they wanted to build a house. So they jump out there because they wanted to build a house. Yeah. It was less about location and more about the house they were building. Now I feel like it's almost completely about the location. Now that may not mean that it's in downtown Montgomery or Indian Hill. It may be out in Oxford because they want some property. So I think people just doing and kind of being okay with what they want to do rather than just saying, hey, I'm doing this because this is an investment. Yeah. People do what the heck they want. Yeah. That's probably it. But when it comes to trends, you know, when it comes like the types of rooms, you know, finished basements, studies, all that kind of stuff, I haven't seen a dramatic amount of change. Most people, you should tell me because you're designing a lot of homes. People aren't really asking for anything groundbreaking or crazy these days. You know, I don't know if you're seeing anything.
I think the hardest part with it is I mean, it's a Wieland home. You know, a Wieland home, to me, I say a Wieland home is going to have a certain amount of features. It's going to have certain things. Then, and we talk about this in our Builder 20 group. It's like, you know, is anybody doing energy efficiency stuff? And we're all kind of like, I think our customers expect that when they walk in the door.
Yep.
They don't have to ask for it as an option. And there's so many different things that we do that are just like, this is cool, this is wow. But what you're so much trying to get all the time is somebody comes to you and says, here's what I'm looking for.
Yes.
And here's my budget. And it's like, all right, well, we have to figure out how to get it to there.
Yeah.
And then so we're like, all right, first thing, square footage. Where's it going to be built at? If you're on 10 acres, how far off the street, all of these different factors start to play into it. And every time you add something to it, something else gets taken off because you only have a parameter of the budget. So I think that's where people start a lot of times. And then you start once you get that nailed down, all right, well, let's start talking about the cool stuff.
Yes, exactly.
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Let's do a basketball court.
Yeah.
Let's do a pickleball court. Let's do, do we have money left? And they find money or something,
Exactly. Yeah, it always comes, it's like under the sheets. Like, I forgot this was under there. We're in pretty good shape now. Yeah.
Here you go.
You are totally right, though. It's like those fun features, like people do, the fun is back in homes completely. Like, I think that is something like pickleball courts, you nailed it.
Yep.
I don't know how many homes over in Peterloo Meadows are putting basketball hoops or something. I say the courts, and whether it's in the garage because they're vaulting the ceilings, putting it out in the basement. Like, I know you've done it. It's just people want that.
Yeah.
They want to be able to have. I hear this all the time. It's like, I want my house to be the one that people come to.
Right.
Yeah.
They love I hear that too.
Stuff like that. Because that could mean it's 45 minutes away and they still want people to have a reason to come out there. They want their kids to come back. So we hear that quite a bit right now. But you're totally right. It's like, it's all about refining that budget to make that balance work. Every once in a while, we get a client that's like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to do whatever the heck I want to do.
Yeah.
But even at $5 million, you normally have
everybody has a budget.
And
even at $5-10 million, there's a budget in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And definitely.
You made a great point as far as like energy efficiency. AV is a big one as well. There's a certain level of expectation, I think, in the homes and the caliber that we're talking about right now that are just status quo. Like if you're below that, that's not a custom home to them. So if you don't offer it, it may not mean you have geothermal or solar, but there's some sort of energy efficiency and there's some kind of, maybe the home is wired with certain things and components in there as far as that goes. So I think the standard has been raised big time. And I think that's why houses just cost more.
Yeah.
You don't realize you're putting more into these homes.
Especially on the energy efficiency stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Code's kind of dictating a lot.
I mean, I started building when there was no Tyvek, no vapor barrier, no air infiltration barrier, you know, and you just think about the things that have come along for that alone is unbelievable. But then, like we do, that's that what do you call it? Platinum and all that stuff that we're LEED platinum and things that we're doing down there in the city. That's a whole nother avenue, but
it is
pretty cool stuff.
It is.
I think more along the line of bringing the outside in, the inside out. So when we build these houses, it's almost like we don't need to finish the basement anymore because that's kind of like people are like, well, you got to finish the basement. Like, why? Because probably putting bedrooms down there, but all the entertainment is on the first floor.
Agreed.
And you open these huge doors up and you're walking in and out on the back porch, coming right in. And no matter what type of house, it's so cool.
I agree 100%. People love sitting on the back porch, popping the TV out in the back or just have the pool. 100%. That indoor, outdoor. It's funny because people kind of forget we live in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's never as usable as people think it is. But the idea of even if it's 20 days a year that you can use that and you're using it well. I mean, some people use it every single day, but they put the screens in and all that kind of stuff. But it's not as usable as we'd like it to be. But the days you do use it, it's worth every penny.
Worth every penny.
Yeah, I would do it.
It's like a backup generator.
Yep. We built our house and then it is that, you know what? That's a sore subject for my wife. I was too cheap. I told her not to, we don't need one of those. We've lost power about 5-10 times. And she's like, I can't believe you told me out of that damn thing.
We have a pool heater and not a backup generator. So when we lose power, I'm like, go get in the pool.
That's it.
See how that works for you.
You stay. See how that goes right now, right?
So, can you explain? So I'm just thinking about the market and the terms of the market. And there was a new rule, or so to speak, that was passed for realtors and all that stuff. Can you talk about that a little bit and tell me what your knowledge is? And do you think it's set in stone? What do you think's happening with that deal?
So I follow very closely with this. It's interesting what's happening. We've expected it for 4 or 5 years. This is not anything new. I think the publicity it's gotten since, it was March that it really just hit the news and it was a big deal. So basically NAR is our trade group, the National Association of Realtors.
Okay.
That's who, lobbies for real estate agents, but also lobbies for home ownership around the country and the nation and whatnot. So what happened there's been some lawsuits over the course of the past, I'm gonna butcher the timeline, but 4 or 5 years essentially that happened where they were challenging the reason that the buyer's agent gets paid based on seller proceeds. So essentially what they said was a standard, which is 6% essentially. So that means of the 6%, 3% oftentimes would go to the buyer's co-op, 3% would go to the listing agent. And they coupled those two commissions together. What's happening now is those two are being decoupled, which essentially just means broken apart. So when we first started our business, I'll go back because I don't want to say there was ever a problem. There was always discount. You could always, get cheaper rates, go to another agent that may offer discount brokerage, that sort of thing. You could always do that. But I think there was some preconceived notion that there was steering towards 3% commission. So if something was lower, agents wouldn't take you there. We've run a team for a long time. I know that wasn't the case, but there probably are bad apples that do that, unfortunately. So when it came to the announcement that just came out, there's been settlements. So Coldwell Banker, who's our brokerage, they came out back in, I believe, September, October, November last year. They settled on this lawsuit, paying some money. They're changing practices, and so there's two main things that came out of it. The one is the decoupling of the 6%. So, or whatever it is, 5%, 3%, 2%, whatever it is. But basically now there's going to be the listing agent will get paid X, the buyer's agent, there could potentially be compensation towards the buyer agent of Y. That's no longer going to be public to anybody. So you won't be able to go on Zillow or Sipsy Klein, Coldwell Banker, and be able to see what that is. Not even on the MLS websites. So that'll be something that'll be negotiated between the seller and the buyer and on how they want. So if you as a seller, you wanted to sell your home and you had, you said, yeah, I'm going to hire you as my agent, and say, okay, hey, I charge 3% or 2% or whatever. We do charge 3%, coincidentally, but that's not for everything. If we offer a limited service, maybe we'll do something a little different. We try to be full service. So we try to keep certain, standards, the wrong word, but we do have what we compensate ourselves or what we request. Then we come into the buyer side and we may say, hey, Jeff, for a buyer's agent to come here, do you want to offer some sort of seller concession to a represented buyer? And we talk to you and say, hey, you know what? Here's what we're seeing out there. You get to choose it. You can offer 1%. You can offer 3%. You can offer 5% if something's not selling. You can offer whatever you want. So it's decoupled now. So you get to choose based on the position that you're in. The second part of that is the buyer agency agreements. This is where I think the industry went wrong a little ways back is when you'd work with an agent, the agent probably wouldn't have even a conversation about how the agent's going to be compensated representing you as buyer. So some buyers had no idea what their agent was being compensated. Good agents always talked about that because they realized if they didn't, they may not get paid anything if they go to a first sale by owner or something like that. So you now have to have a buyer agency agreement signed when you go into that first meeting before you ever show them a house. And this was supposed to go into effect in July. Now it's going into effect in August. Okay. August 17th. They just changed the date a couple of days ago. So basically all it means is there's more clarity, more transparency around what real estate agents do. And the really nice thing is that I really feel that the agents that provide a lot of value, that are good at what they do, the cream will rise to the top. Those will be great. New agents could be great as well. They just may take some time. You have to have experience. An agent that has 1 day of experience, quite frankly, should not be paid the same as somebody that has 40 years experience and knows what they're doing. That just maybe doesn't provide the same level of value. So that's essentially what's happening right now. It's the decoupling, the buyer agency agreements, and the news has been that that's going to push home prices down. A hard time believing that only because when a house sells, if you sell your house for $700,000 on the street, I don't think the next person's going to want to sell it for $680,000, $685,000 because they're not paying attention. They're going to want $705,000, $710,000. Yeah. So whether or not they're paying the agent a different amount of money, that doesn't really matter. And I still believe in buyer agency. Of course, I'm biased. I'm a real estate agent, but I'll say, if I ever talk to you as a seller and I'm talking to an unrepresented buyer that may not be prepared versus an agent that is a buyer that's represented by an agent that I know they've been coached through everything, they're prepared, they get their pre-approval, they know exactly what they're getting themselves into, that's worth something. So 2%.
I want to sell my house tomorrow, or I want to buy a house tomorrow, and I call an agent up, and I call Mike Hines, and I say, hey, start showing me some houses.
Yes.
I have to sign an agreement with you.
Correct.
What does that agreement say?
So the agreement, the way it is written, and this is actually the way ours have always been, there's basically two numbers you discuss. So that agreement would say, hey, I'll agree to list your home for a period of 90 days, 180 days, whatever we agree on. And we'll say, hey, you know what, we're going to charge X% as your listing agent. That's us representing you. Now, when a buyer comes in, do you want to offer the buyer's agent any compensation, essentially?
Right.
So you would then get to discuss that right there. I think what initially is being thought will happen is that will just go away, and then it's up to you guys to negotiate during the sale. We actually believe differently that, hey, what should happen is that buyer's agent, do you want to offer something to them? Is it what's the worth to you? What's the value to offering a buyer's commission to you? So you're just basically negotiating two different items instead. Right. It used to be just baked into one. 6%,
but if I'm hiring if I'm a buyer and I've hired an agent, what does that agreement say? So is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Am I paying them or how do they even know? Like, what's the point of the agreement?
There's a lot of questions on that. So we have those agreements now. We actually, on the land side, when we're helping somebody find a new home or a lot, we've always asked people to sign those. So that the way that looks is there's basically a few different components in there. Time frame. Hey, if I'm representing you as a buyer, we're going to have an exclusive right or exclusive buyer's agreement that I'm going to represent you for X number of days. And if I find you a house, I'm going to get paid X number of dollars. That's where there'll be options. So maybe if it's like, hey, I'm going to find the house, or I already found a house, I just want you to help me write the contract. That may be one thing. It depends on the circumstance and what the buyer needs on that front. So there's basically that, hey, there's going to be an exclusive buyer agreement that you're going to agree with me as an agent. And then I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do for a certain amount of money or a certain percentage. Could be based on a flat fee, could be based on a percentage. But it's going to be a document that's going to be signed just like in a listing agreement that will have everything spelled out there.
So when you get to the closing, you have I call it a HUD statement. Now they call it something else. Like
Alta.
Alta.
Yeah, Alta, yes.
And on the buyer's side, then it'll have whatever you're paying that commission percentage total number to the agent.
Yes. Well, this is where a few things need to be figured out. The seller may still be compensating the buyer's agent in certain ways. If there's seller concessions that are offered, they're just not public as far as that goes. So that can be something that can be negotiated out during the deal. Or what often happens is the buyer understands that, hey, if for some reason there's no compensation, I agree to pay you X number of dollars because of what you've done.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it'll be directly tied to the value that agent provides.
Yeah.
If they didn't do anything, then you have an agreement for 3% with them. Well, you signed that agreement. You didn't probably do your research on what kind of buyer's agent it is. So essentially what they haven't figured out, and the reason I'm stumbling a little bit is because there's a lot that hasn't been figured out. They're launching this very soon. Yeah. So it's a little daunting to think in August things will change. Our team's very prepared. Every Wednesday we meet to discuss this, to know what's going on, to make sure we're talking through, scenarios, making sure we're doing what's in the best interest of the client. But when it comes to how this all rolls out, what the agreements even look like, they will be changing this over the course of the next couple of months. And then I can't take you through a house unless I have a signed agreement. So let's say you just need to go through a house. You have a couple options. You can call me up as an agent, say, Mike, can you get me through this house? Say, yes, but I have to have you sign this document. And that could be a 1-day showing or 1-day buyer agreement that I can just take you through the house. It can be a full exclusive buyer agreement where I'll say, yes, I'll be your agent on that kind of front. But I think people are going to interview their agents to make sure they're getting exactly what they want versus just a catch-all carte blanche opportunity, which is what's frustrating.
Does it have anything to do with the double dipping, like where you've got this property listed, and then there's somebody who comes in with no agent, and then you say, "Oh, well, that's my buyer too," and now instead of you taking 3, you're taking 6. Didn't that have something to do with it too, or not?
I don't know if that was dual agency is what you're talking about. Right. That's been an elephant out there hanging for a long, long time. I don't know if that's exactly what this stemmed from.
Okay.
What this stemmed from from what I've read and what I understand was mainly that buyers agents were getting paid a standard based on not the effort they did, but based on what was always published out there.
Yeah.
So it was less about dual agency and representing both sides. That's fraught with issues as well. There can be problems there because it's really hard to balance loyalty on both sides, right? So that's in there. I don't want to say it's not a part of it. I think that was only maybe a smaller part of it in general.
Okay.
But the practice you just said of saying, hey, an agent comes in or a buyer comes in out of the blue and I'm representing you, and now all of a sudden I get 2 sides of it. That's actually where the decoupling will help out, though, because if I'm representing you for 3%, there's not an automatic just falling into an extra 3% or 2% or whatever on that kind of front. And that's why we've always on the builder side specifically always had it decoupled. Where it's been two different. And
I think one of the things that people probably don't realize that goes on in the business is I'm a buyer. I'm gonna go buy a house from MI Homes.
Yes.
And I'm sitting at the bar one night, and my buddy says, "Hey, I'm a realtor," and oh well, hey, I could take you and show you that, and you've already been there, and then all of a sudden you walk in one day with a realtor, and then MI's there, like, I guess we got to pay this dude or something,
Yes.
You never know. I mean, that's probably one of the things that it's probably protecting against is people just jumping on the bandwagon and having to cost people money. And then, I think the other thing is what happens to us a lot of times is I'll be meeting with people and maybe they were brought in with a realtor, and all of a sudden they'll say, "Hey, we don't really know that person."
Yes.
And I'm not really sure, do we need, and they'll say to me, which is the worst question in the world, do we need representation?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man,
you put me in a spot.
and I'm like, listen, I know this realtor. No, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Because we've been around a long time and we want to take care of you. We have salespeople, we have everybody here. But at the same time, I don't want to be like cutting this person out of the deal. Of
course, yeah.
But then I think this protects it because they have an agreement. They've been talked about. Those people have had that conversation with that agent.
Exactly. Well, before you ever get into any meeting.
Yeah.
The clarity from day one. Our standard has always been, if we're working with a buyer, we have what's called a buyer consultation. We will bring them into the office. We will talk through every single detail of the process of building or buying a house, whatever it is, including compensation. Because quite frankly, when you represent a buyer and they're going to a builder, there's a line item for that agent, whether they see it or not. There's a line item. And so when that line item pops up in 6 months, once you find a lot and you start to talk to the builder, the last thing I ever want is the buyer to question what I'm doing is like, gosh, are you worth that amount of money? That is a terrible feeling.
Exactly.
And I've been on the other side of that where I represent the builder and I see the agent or the buyer question it, just like you're saying. That's not okay. You got to have these conversations up front. So then, if you're building $1 million house, you know exactly what you're paying your agent.
Yeah.
So I think that is the best thing that's going to come of this. And falling into a deal, that shouldn't happen. People shouldn't just all of a sudden fall into money. You got to earn what you're doing. And that's, if we boiled this down to one issue, it's like real estate agents, we need to raise the bar, and we need to raise the bar with what we do. And I think there are some fantastic, phenomenal agents that are out there that just
100%.
kick butt. Just like there's builders. Some builders have good names, some builders have bad names for a good reason, right? So I'm a big proponent of having an advisor, somebody, a trusted advocate, whether it's an agent or anybody else on your side. You just need to make sure it's the right person, and that it's all about compensation needs to match your value. If it does not, and there's some kind of imbalance, then there's going to be a problem down the road.
100%. Yeah. I agree 100%. And it's easy for us to sit here and talk like this because you're playing by the rules. You're doing the right things. You understand this stuff. And what we're talking about is the people who didn't play by the rules,
Correct.
The people who didn't do it the right way, the people who were trying to backdoor something, do something wrong, and that's where it gets a little bit tough at. So I encourage people. We had a whole podcast on finding your builder, finding your land, finding this, and how do you handle that with a realtor, and making sure you have clear, upfront conversations with your real estate agent. And if you are going to a builder, that you're having that conversation, clear, transparent conversation with the builder.
Correct.
This is my agent. This is what we're doing. And how does the builder like to handle that agent? How much involvement do you want? Whatever. So what kind of advice would you give a realtor that we're talking about on how to deal with builders?
The first thing is just know who the builders are. Just know the landscape, right? It's just like an agent that knows an area really well. They know what they're dealing with and what they're not dealing with. It's funny. I was just at an HBA meeting, the Home Builder Association meeting yesterday, and I was talking about our CE classes and all of the realtor builder alliances. And the problem is like most agents don't realize they need to be a part of the building industry. They need to know who the key players are, who are the good builders and maybe the not so great builders on that front. And again, not that you should steer one towards the other, but you need to know what you're getting your client into.
How do you get on that list?
Yeah. And to stay on the list you're on, because that's the right one, right? And that's the state. It's like you got to know who to go to when your client's out there looking, who to introduce them to. And I think that's the good agents have relationships with great builders.
Yeah.
I think that's what's it. So like an agent that's just getting started, just like you're building your business, to start meeting people, meet builders, understand them, understand their product, understand what it's all about. The more you know, the better you're going to be to your client. If your client knows more than you, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that happens sometimes.
I think patience is probably another word I would use when you're a realtor dealing with a builder, because it's not transactional.
Yes.
And it takes so much time to do everything, and setting meetings up and pre-planning and selections and like signing a contract is one of the last pieces of paperwork we do before we dive into actual construction stuff. It's a long time to get there, and then which means a big house like one of ours, it could take 1.5 years to build it, and that means that you're probably not going to get paid for 1.5 years, and you have to be prepared for that, and that's another thing you could probably talk about on the front end of how you get paid, not how much you get paid, but how you get paid.
Yes, exactly, and I think, unfortunately, instant gratifications is something I think in life that people want. Agents are no different. If you buy a resale home, it's 30, 45 days you can have a closing. Of course, it could take months to find that right house. But for us, is like the average timeline that we're working with the buyer is 2 years.
Yeah.
Because we're finding hard to find lots So we talk about like what we're providing for us, our firm. We provide access to knowing opportunities, finding opportunities. My dad runs our entire land department. So we have people out there just searching for land, whether it's developments, whether it's single family teardowns, whatever it is. So that like you got to offer that. Then the knowledge base of like understanding the process, because your process is different than, builder ABC down the road. Yeah. So understanding it.
Thanks for not saying anybody else's name.
Don't worry, I wouldn't do that to you. Come on in. As long as we don't mention any other realtors in here, we're in good shape. Yeah, yes. But the other part of that is also this never needs to be adversarial. I think that's one of my biggest frustrations with agents is they try to flex their muscles sometimes to make their client feel like they're worth it, when in reality that's actually making things worse. It's like your goal, as long as everything's going well, your goal should be to kind of keep everything on the tracks, to keep it going well. But unfortunately, sometimes they feel the need to strong arm, and then that just sets their client off on a bad path, maybe kind of ruins the relationship with the builder, and then it could send it down a path that you never would have wanted to go.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. As real estate agents, when I see that happen, I can normally have heart to hearts with people. So I can, I get it. I understand what their concerns are, and I can be like, hey, I understand you're frustrated about this, but here's where the builder's coming from. Here's where your client's coming from. Let's find some common ground where everybody's happy. Right. And normally it can happen that way, but you know how it is. There's some people that clients as well. Clients can be difficult. Clients can be really tough, and when they don't know enough about something, they may dig their feet into in the sand, and they may not know exactly where they're headed on that path. Yeah. Or if you can enlighten them, give them a little bit more information, make them understand, maybe they'll have a little more sympathy for the pain and anguish that you guys go through on a day-to-day basis.
Well, all of us. I mean, I always tell people, if you're unhappy about it as a customer or a realtor, we're probably unhappy, which means it wasn't like we were sitting there going, ha ha, this is so great. Exactly. And you are just so miserable and we are so happy. It's not like that. Usually we're all miserable. We got to come up with a common ground somewhere.
Exactly. It's a
so
tough
it takes
spot.
a meeting, something to do it. So what would be your advice for a builder working with a realtor?
Yeah. I'd say keep an open mind. A lot of builders either have preconceived notions that all agents are this or all agents are that. So that would probably be my first thought, is just understand them, understand where they're coming from. The other part of it, when it comes to agents in general, is a lot of them aren't just out there for the commission. So I just make sure that a builder does realize that. Just like, not every builder is out there just to try to, throw the wool over somebody's eyes and have a price come back at $200,000 more than the client wants. Yeah. I think that's where there's just so much misinformation out there that I think people always think the angles that people are trying to play are wrong. Yeah. So I just say, hey, if you can come at it from being a team player, most builders, I can speak from experience with you, is like, most of the key players out there, how to do this. You've done this a time or two. So people, you can work your way through any experience, right? Other builders that are maybe a little bit newer, they come in, they're a little idealistic. They think they can make the big grasp, just huge changes and change the industry the way it is. Unfortunately, it doesn't work as well as you'd like. Maybe we're just getting old, but I really think that sometimes like modest, small change to improve a process is better than just sweeping change throughout. So I say that just only like in making new business practices and changing the way the industry works. I know I'm not answering your question exactly, but
no, you're doing great. I think that it's a misconception. I think that we all need each other. And I say this sometimes about salespeople in general, not just realtors. If I'm talking about when I'm buying furniture, buying a car or something like that, I have a tendency sometimes to stop and look at them and say, you're supposed to make the sale, right? Yeah. I mean, you are doing everything you can to screw this up. Yeah. And I'm just like seconds away from kicking your ass, let alone just not buying something from you, Yeah. And I'm like, man, that's the end goal is not me. Yes. And it's not the house and it's not a number of different things. It's the customer. Yeah. We are representing, but if it's a custom builder, we're representing people. As a realtor, you're representing people, and that's number one. Yeah. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we lose sight of that. Again, egos sometimes it's like, something pops up and you think it's a direct, just thing against you. It's like, nah, it's just because this is an emotional business. There's a lot going in there. You're totally right. Yeah. So you got to be in the people business. And I think if you keep that one fundamental that you just said of it's all about the customer, then you're winning. You're going to do great. If you start to sway from that and start to think it's about how great the houses are, how impressive they are, and that kind of stuff, and that goes for the agents, how big you can get, how many clients you can serve, that becomes a problem.
What advice, and we're going like a long time here, and I think you got to get going to a meeting, but And I don't mind that. Some people want a 20-minute podcast. I'm like, you're not done 20 minutes.
Well, you kick it in
Let's hear bullshit for a little while. Have fun. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to purchase a luxury custom home or build a luxury custom home? What advice would you give them?
So the first thing I'd say is know who your advisor is. Like, no, and that doesn't need to be an agent. Know somebody else that's built a house. Know where to start, because a lot of times people will start setting up meetings and talking to builders, and they'll go down this path. So know who the key players are, get some good advice from somebody. It can be from a builder, it can be from a friend. So I'd say if you want to build a house, that's the very first thing you do. The second thing was do your research. Once you've found a builder, once you've found an area, dig in, do your own research, understand it, go drive around. I always say, like, we have a client coming in on next Wednesday to go look at a piece of property. They're like, yeah, we've got all the answers from this agent. We've figured it out. I'm like, go out there. Let's spend some time out there. Just spend the day, understand it. Go drive the property maybe in the morning and at night. Go to the places around there. Make sure you really feel good about it. Same goes with the builder. Go look at a bunch of their houses. Understand what you're looking at. It's not rocket science. Yeah. You just start getting comfortable with it. And the last thing I'll say is don't be afraid to move fast. Like, I know that goes against it, but like when something's right and it feels good, but you're nervous, that doesn't mean you're moving too fast, because in this day and age, there aren't enough opportunities out there for you to sit around and wait, because you're going to lose out on the good ones. And we have a client that we're working with right now that unfortunately we should have pushed them to move a day earlier than they did. And now we're in a situation where there's multiple offers. Yeah. And you don't want to push your client to do anything they're not comfortable with, but we knew they wanted the house. They expressed that, and we were trying to nudge them a little bit and just say, guys, if you want this, now we waited too long and you're missing the opportunity. So don't be afraid to act. I think that's paralysis by analysis. I'm saying, hey, research, do all this kind of stuff. But when it feels right, if you're getting good vibes, if you're having good conversations with your advisors, they're telling you it's a good idea, don't be afraid to pull the trigger.
Right. Yeah. That's good advice. Yeah. I think that's good advice. People always ask me, like, who's building these houses? Who's building these houses? What is the coolest, I shouldn't say coolest customer, but like the coolest job that somebody's done that you worked with? Oh,
the coolest job.
Can
like
you can say, like
on that kind of front. We've done some pretty dang. What I'll say is my mother-in-law, she built a house that was just the most contemporary, modern house that was just kick ass. It was fun. It was different than anything else. It was a process and a half, because she had one architect. It ended up being way too big. Then she had to get another. So it never was a smooth. But this house, 14-foot ceilings, super modern throughout. It was exact opposite of what she had, like when she had built her first house. And it was one of those houses that was so sleek. It was so awesome that the neighbor ended up buying the house. They had just built their house. So they ended up buying it afterwards because they liked it so much.
Nice.
A couple of years later, they bought it. So that was one of them. Man, like, we're fortunate to get to work with some awesome people. Yeah. I think you had a question on here about, like, what's your favorite thing about what we do? Working with awesome people, and especially when there's maybe been some scenarios where there's been less than ideal situations and that sort of thing. When you find good people, good clients, good builders, and you can build that relationship where you just create friends for a long, long time, that's awesome.
That is really
cool. So
their
houses are, like, when you get to see them building these kick-ass entertaining areas, big, fireplace, vaulted ceilings, and the covered porch going out, maybe to a pool overlook and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty dang awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It makes it fun. How about you, though? I'll turn that table real quick. What's the coolest thing you've ever built?
Oh, man.
Put you on the spot.
There's so many different things that like I always referred back, like these two Habitat for Humanity houses we built outside the zoo, and we did it as a blitz, and it was like 5 days we had to build the thing, and we just came off of the Extreme Makeover Home back in 2008 where we did that. But that was really cool because it was enlightening. Yeah. It was really cool to do that, and it was enlightening. But beyond that, we built a Frank Lloyd Wright kind of design house over on Camargo Club back in there, and that was really cool and it was cool not because the house was just cool, but it was on this like peak of this hill on 10 acres, and we had to start in the back and move forward, so we built these retaining walls, and then we built some landscaping, and then we built the pool, and then we came forward and built the foundation, because when I was done, you couldn't get around the left side of it, and you only had about 6 feet to get around the right side of it to get to the back of it. So it was really challenging. It was really fun. that house that we built down in Walworth and to 2020 Homerama house.
Oh, yeah.
It's 5 stories, and my homeowner was just the coolest person, still is the coolest person. And we started out with that design like a brownstone in New York. So, that thing was, and it's just funky building a 5-story house that's 40 feet wide.
And it's the peak of the hill right there overlooking the city, right in the bend. Talk about a killer home.
But I freak out when I walk out there all the time. It's just, I hate the heights.
It's no joke. This is where people got to give you credit. You're up. How high are you up from that one side up there? Yeah. People putting, not scaffolding, but they're putting the siding
62
up.
feet,
sort of
man.
Yeah, it's no joke. It's like a skyscraper, equivalent when you're doing these other single family houses.
But I love all. It's every time, almost 90% of the time when we're building these houses, it's the first time it's ever been built.
Yes.
So you're figuring things out. You're looking at things. But the other cool thing is that every time you're doing it specifically. Somebody's told you that that's what they wanted.
Yes.
And we built up $1.5 million house for a guy one time, and his whole goal was, because in his current house was, when he'd shave, his elbow would hit the wall, and he goes, and I don't want that anymore. And I'm like, all right, well, let's fix that, and it just, you do little things that change people's lives, and I think that's so neat. But and when we talk about that Habitat for Humanity house, they gave a statistic of something like, when somebody has a table to sit at night to eat dinner and do their homework at, they are something like 90-something% better off of not being in a gang, not being drug overdose, not being this, not being that. Awesome. I don't. That's inner city stuff, but I think that's the case with any of us anywhere. Yeah. When you have a place to lay your head, when you have a place to give other people the opportunity to lay your head, when you have a place to eat dinner and mingle and talk to people and just gather, I think that changes life's perspective, or your perspective on life. And so it's all cool. I know that's a roundabout answer, but
no, I think that's totally, it's funny how you build some incredible homes, right? And then sometimes it's some of the most modest situations that are just the most impactful. I feel like that's life in general, right? It's it's easy for us to get caught up in the day to day of all, let's be honest, all this money, all this wealth that's happening out there, and some really interesting stuff. And it's really important. Don't get me wrong, because these are great families, people that there's so much goodness that comes out of that. But then sometimes you get to see on the other side of it and see how it impacts, just maybe people with lesser means. And those deals stick with you. I say deals, those people, those situations stick with you, And you're like, gosh, wow, this is important. And we're just fortunate because we have the luxury of getting to meet people, getting to do this sort of thing. Yeah. So whether it's a really cool feature in a home, or getting to meet somebody that you saw have their daughter be able to sit at the kitchen table and be able to do really well, and you see them 5-10 years down the road, you know how well they're doing and how happy and how impactful that made for you.
Heck yeah, man. It's a cool, like, I think we you and I both probably, we forget to be grateful for things like, I shouldn't speak for you, but when you were talking about being around your dad every day and being around your brother and being around your family and your mom and stuff, and you do that all the time, and we don't realize the other side of it, where some people live thousands of miles away from their family and never get to see them. And when I was working with my mom and dad, I get to work with my brother every single day. And it's something that it's you just forget about. You take it for granted, and you're like, oh, everybody gets to do this. Yeah, but it's pretty cool. It's cool to do that stuff. But it's also the same thing when we get to. We drive across this Southwest Ohio all the time, Northern Kentucky. You get to see some of the coolest places in the world. Yeah. There's other people who are stuck working at home and they're stuck working in an office, and we're cruising down the road and through Indian Hill, looking at these unbelievable houses, and getting to meet some of these people that do things we'd never thought we'd ever get to meet. Right. It's awesome.
It's impressive. Yeah. It's I'm doing this. This is a quick sidebar, but I'm training for this mountain climb coming up here pretty soon. And part of my weekly routine now is I have to hike for 3 hours a day. Not every day, but a couple times a week. A couple people on my team and some friends are doing it with us. We're going out to Jackson Hole to do this, but part of it. So when I go out and hike, I left on Sunday morning at 5 a.m. the other day just to go hike because I wanted to get back before my kids really got started on their day. And I'm out walking. I decided to take my earbuds out and just this time just go walk. And I'm walking through Indian Hill and going up there, and I'm far. This is streets I've driven down, thousands of times. And I'm looking around, and you start to just notice things a little differently then. So it's nice once you can unplug and kind of relish where you are and what you're doing a little bit, because sometimes damn, the day to day just catches up with you and you forget to appreciate what you're around. So you say being grateful, it's hard to be grateful sometimes when you're moving so fast.
Yep.
Sometimes when you slow down for a quick second, and you almost need to force yourself to do it or tell somebody else to do it, like just somebody tell me to do it.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, all right, you know what? Sometimes this other stuff doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. It does matter. Don't get me wrong. Like, everything matters, but maybe not as much as you're putting weight on your shoulders on that kind of front. So I don't know, it just hit me because I told my wife this. I was like, have you ever noticed this house that's off this street? I'm driving by and it's this small little sliver of ground. And she's like, no, I've driven by this so many times. But when you're walking and you literally have a chance to stop, you can look around and probably creep a little bit. Like, there's probably creeping people out at 6:30 in the morning, looking on the property, walking on Given Road. But it was the most enjoyable thing I've had in a long time.
It's amazing how much the elevation changes. Like when you're driving, you think the road's flat, but when you're walking, it's a pretty steep climb. That's crazy.
That
isn't it?
hill on Spooky Hollow is a pain in the butt. You know, it is, and that's what I have to do because I have to climb 29,000 feet for this thing. I'm like, I just got to keep going up and down hills.
That's incredible.
We'll see if I do it. If I finish it, I mean, it's gonna be hard. But yeah, so
That's
so
really
just
cool
to go
that
back to
you're
your
doing
point, yeah, it'll be fun.
That's cool. Well, it's like what Ferris Bueller said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, it's going to pass you by.
That's the truth.
It's the truth, man. It's the truth. So, hey, you're one of the great ones, and I think the world of you. I think you're just an awesome person.
Thanks,
I think people get jealous of when I start talking about you because they're like, why do you like him so much? I think that you're a good dude. I think we have some history that's parallel with each other, like the way we grew up and the things we've done in this business. But I think you're a wellspring of knowledge. You do a great job in this business and you help a tremendous amount at the Home Builders Association. And it's just cool to be able to sit here and catch up with you and hear what you have to say, man.
Thanks so much for saying
thank
those
you.
words. Yeah,
Thanks for being here.
We got to flip the table a little bit so I can ask you all these questions.
Let's do it.
Like that.
Let's do it.
What's funny is as well as we know each other, as much as we get to see each other, like we don't know as much as we should about each other. And that's the thing about these things.
I love this podcast because when I sit down with somebody, and it could be people I've known for a long time, and you start to learn things about them, and I'm like, that is so cool. I did not know that.
Yeah,
it's so cool. I love it.
Yeah. All right. So make me a promise that one day I'm going to buy a lot cheaper equipment, or maybe I'll just come back over here and do it, and I'm going to interview you and ask you some good questions.
They make bars, where we could just sit around and do that. It's a deal. It's a deal. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hey, here we are with Michael Hines here on the WB Download.
I love it.
All right, everybody. Well, like I said, that was just so cool to sit down with Michael and learn more about him and his family. Learn about his wife's business. That was really cool. If you're from Southwest Ohio, that's a fun fact about Mitchell's Salon and Day Spa. And I was also, I forget, so many things. And I just had this conversation with my wife the other day. I know things, but I forget them. And then until people bring them back up to me, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I forget about that. I don't know if it's because I'm old or because I'm dumb, but, my first house that I built as a supervisor for my dad on my own was in a neighborhood that his family developed, which was Pine Run in Mason. That was also a home Rama, and that was also a neighborhood that my mom and dad lived in up there while I was in college. So that was a little bit of deep history there. And then also the first home Rama that I ever shared, and we mentioned this in the show, I was very young and took it over. Of course, I've been working at home Rama since I was a little kid, so I knew quite a bit about it. But as I came into that, was a neighborhood that his dad had developed. And so I just, like I said, I forget about these things. And then I realize how much history we have together. But just I hope anybody that's in here in Southwest Ohio, or if you come into Cincinnati, and you get an opportunity to run into Michael, or you get an opportunity to do some business with him, I hope you do, because he's just a salt of the earth. Good dude, and I was proud to have him on here, and just really appreciate his time and his knowledge that he brought to us to talk about different things and talk about the market. So hopefully we'll have him back on here to give us another update here at the end of the year or next year, and keep bringing it back because he's a good dude. So thanks again, Michael Hines from Oyler Hines here in Southwest Ohio. And thank you everybody to listening to the show and tuning in to the WB Download. Wilson and I thank you for being here here today, and Wilson is ready to get going. So, anyway, subscribe to the WB Download here on your favorite podcast. You can get them wherever people always say, hey, how do I get on there? I usually end up sharing the show with them so they can dive in, but you can get it pretty much anywhere you get your podcast needs at. Don't forget that we come out on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. And if you want to be part of the conversation or you want to be a guest on our show, email me at wbdownload@wielandbuilders.com or go to our website, wielandbuilders.com, and you can find all of our contact information on there as well. And like I said, check out I always say this, check out all of our awesome houses because we're putting pictures up on Facebook. We've got a ton of Instagram. We've got a ton of Pinterest out there that you guys can see different things that we have going on. And I say this because I'm so proud of it. And it's so cool to see the things that our customers and us are putting together. Thank you again for everybody for tuning in. Thanks for being here. I'm Jeff Wieland. He's Wilson Wieland, and we are here on a WB Download. Thank you.